everybody and welcome back to a new video on my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Leora and I make videos about reading, writing and sometimes other stuff as well. And today I'm doing my October wrap up. I'm a little bit on the late side. I'm sorry for that, but I'm still really excited to discuss everything that I've read in October. I had a really good reading month and I read a bunch of witchy, spooky things, like perfect October reads, so I'm just so excited to discuss these with you. Unfortunately, I lent out a lot of the books I was reading, so I only have one physically left in my home right now. And I also listen to some audiobooks, so I don't have physical copies. And it's like unfortunate because I'm trying to read more of my physical books that I own, but it's really difficult, especially when there's like so many good apps like Storytel and Scribd that I use. For both are links in my description, by the way. And it's like, there's so many good books on all of these apps that I want to read and try, and it's like, oh my god, a book that I can read now. And yeah, then it messes my whole reading my physical books thing up again, so. Okay, so I started out my October really strong by reading The Inheritance of Arcadia Divina, which is one of my new favorite witch books ever, which is big for me because I am obsessed with witch books. I love witch fiction, and this is just a new favorite that I adored so much. I also did a reading vlog where I read only witchy books for a whole week, so definitely check that one out if you haven't seen it yet. So in The Inheritance of Arcadia Divina, we follow Arcadia, who is a young witch, and she moves to this valley and builds this magical house there. And one of the first scenes is with her and the local sheriff, and this local sheriff is not too keen on her being there. Well, actually the townsfolk are not too keen on her being there, but the sheriff like doesn't really have that big of a problem with it, but he's got to go over there because he's pressured into it. And this scene is immediately what got me into the book because it's such an atmospheric scene and everything is so magical, and this whole valley, and it just gave me so many like cozy family witchy feelings immediately. It was really good. So in the beginning you read some scenes where she's still young. In the chronological storyline, she's an old woman who's dying. I feel like I'm making this unnecessarily complicated. So she's built this family in this valley. She's had multiple generations of children and she had a lot of husbands. So she also had quite a lot of children, and everybody's moved out. Everybody's started their own life in different parts of the world. And Arcadia is basically calling all of them back home in her magical ways to discuss her death because she feels that she's dying soon. She's actually physically turning into a tree because, I mean, she's the witchy great-grandmother of everybody. So of course she's turning into a tree. This is just a story filled with so much love and magic and a dysfunctional family and people trying to discover their own magical powers and life. There's a struggling artist in here, several female characters coming to terms with their connections to other people. It's just a really powerful story that I really enjoyed. There's also lots of humor in here and the atmosphere is just so good. Could not recommend it more. If you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts, definitely check out that vlog. Then the next read I picked up is The Magician's Five by Lila Sturges. This is the graphic novel series based on The Magicians by Lev Grossman, which is also a book series I really liked. But this is the graphic novel series, so it's a bunch of graphic novels and it's all set in the world of the magicians, but it's a different storyline completely. I adore this storyline. If you're looking for like a dark academia graphic novel series, highly recommend this one. It's so good. It's basically about this magical academy, Breakbills. The Magicians is also set at Breakbills, which is basically a university for witches and warlocks. And in this story, there's this new understanding between the headmaster and one of the leaders of the hedge witches. And they've basically come to an agreement to let some of these hedge witches who've been trained for magic at home, like by their families, it's more of a family thing for them, more of a natural thing, to let them into the elite academy to train with the like academically trained witches. And it soon turns out that this is maybe not the best idea because there's a lot of tension between these elite witches and these hedge witches. All sorts of themes of privilege and different standings in society come forward in this story. But there's of course also an evil power on the prowl, and there's lots of beautiful dark academia settings, and I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely on the gruesome side. Like there's some illustrations in there that I would categorically put in the horror section. Quite scary, like lots of beheadings and stuff like that. Very diverse cast as well, which I'm really enjoying too. I'm not sure if there's any more issues out right now because I couldn't find them, but maybe I've just not looked hard enough. So overall, I'm really enjoying this series, but this issue specifically was not my favorite. I think I only gave like 2 stars because it was just a bit of a letdown for me. But some of the earlier issues were like 5 stars, really good. After this, I picked up The Crow Folk, The Witches of Woodsville Part 1 by Mark Stay. Now this book was a bit of a mixed bag for me. There were lots of things about it that I adored. It's got a very whimsy, sort of silly atmosphere. It's super, super autumnal. It's perfect for October and Halloween. Like, there's literally pumpkin-headed creatures attacking this village. It's also historical. The main character is this silly girl trying to survive and grow up and discover what her connection to witchcraft is and whether her mother was a witch. And then there's these old towns witches who are trying to stop her, but they also sort of want to help her because they feel for her. Lots of great elements. There was also some hints at a bigger world of witches and like a bigger story behind all of this. But then there was also some really weird remarks being made in this book. So it's set in World War II, and that setting is sort of, I'm not sure whether it was necessary for it to be put in World War II. I also get it because like some parts of the plot it was necessary, but at the same time, it could have been changed around a bit. I'm just not sure why that choice was made. Maybe the choice was made just so that there would only be like women and old people left in the town. But so our main character is trying to sort of keep this town together, which is lovely. But then she says some really weird things. Like there's one character who's just racist and sexist, and she's like, yeah, he may be those things, but it's still one of us. And I was like, is that the way to go? I'm not sure. And this was so towards the end that it kind of struck me, like I didn't see it coming, and it kind of like took me out of the story for a bit. I was like, so that was just strange. Overall, it was a cozy read and I did enjoy it, but that just took me out of the story a little bit. Then after this, I read Small Town Big Magic, which is sort of Gilmore Girls meets a witchy book. Really enjoyed the first half, but after that, I got so sick and tired of the romance plot. I ended up giving it only 2 stars because it was just really grating on my nerves at one point. So our main character is very Lorelai Gilmore. She's very set in her ways. She knows what she wants. She's sort of running this small town. She's organizing the yearly Redbutt Festival, which is all really lovely. And it's got these like cozy small town autumn vibes. And I was really like having a good time with this read. I was like, yeah, it's also cozy and nice and cute, and it's Gilmore Girls vibes. Our main character discovers that her entire friend group are witches. And from the get-go, I was like, there's more to it. There's more to it than they are telling you. I just know it. Of course I was right, without spoiling anything further. The romance plot in this book and me, we just did not connect. Like the two of us, not friends. I just felt like she and our love interest had no chemistry, like just zero chemistry. I also just wanted a witchy read, and I kept like being pulled back to read about romance, and I was like, I don't care. I just don't care. And I'm not sure what happened because, for example, when I read The X-Hex, I didn't mind the romance. I thought it was nice, but I think that's also because then I was like prepared for a witchy rom-com, and here I was hoping the rom-com would be on the lower side of the story, and it kind of was, but it still annoyed me. After this, I picked up What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, which was so good. Like, had never heard of this book, wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, but unexpectedly, I really, really loved this. So this is a retelling of an Edgar Allan Poe story, which I did not know going in. I have not read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe too. I should, though. Like, my writing teacher is like, you should read that because you'll love it. So I do own an Edgar Allan Poe story collection. So this book is based on The Fall of the House of Usher, and I know that loads of people love that story, and I adored T. Kingfisher's version of it, so maybe I should check out the original as well. So it's about Alex Easton, and he receives word that one of his family friends, Madeline Usher, is dying. So he rushes to their manor, which is like very remote and in the forest, and Madeline and her brother live there. It's like their family estate. And immediately from the get-go, this book has the scariest vibes and like loads of little slimy, earthy elements. I don't know, there's just something like scary going on, and lots of mushroom themes, which I really enjoyed. Like, I enjoyed the part that mushrooms played in this short horror story. It's sort of a novella, so it's like not really a short story, but not really a full book either. So the family friend, Madeline, is sleepwalking, speaking in strange voices, whispering. It's like she's sort of possessed. And from the get-go, I was like, this girl's possessed. She's so possessed. T. Kingfisher did such a great job in building up the scary atmosphere and everything getting worse and worse. And they also made it humorous at the same time, which was like such an accomplishment. So it was scary, but I was still really enjoying myself and like having little giggles at some moments in the story, even though I was also creeped out at loads of points in this story. So I ended up giving it 4 stars, really loved it, highly recommend. Then I picked up Slewfoot by Brom, which is definitely a new favorite as well. So many good reads this month, actually. So in Slewfoot, we follow Abatha, and Abatha has been sort of sent away from home to marry this man who she doesn't know, and she ends up in this really puritanical, sort of cult-like religious town where she's really struggling, and her husband is basically the only nice person she has. They're trying to build a life together, but then this demon in the woods comes comes in and sort of ruins everything. Well, that's what we think at first, but then it turns out that Abatha's mother might have been a witch, and she also has some witchy ways within her. At the end, it's sort of the devil between the town. Reading this novel was such a cinematic experience. I think Brom is really, really, really good at setting the scene and almost making you feel the mist upon your skin and the cold. And of course, the gorgeous illustrations and paintings that Brom all made himself in this novel, like the chapter headings and the ones in the middle, so stunning, really helped to put me in the story. Immediately recommended this book to all of my friends. Since I borrowed my copy, I've been doubting whether I want to buy one for myself, but I'm thinking maybe I'll just invest that money in like another Brom book that I can then dive into. So yeah, I'm really excited to discover more of this author because this was definitely a hit. Then after that, I read The Hedge Witch, which I really enjoyed. I only gave it 3 stars, but that's because this book was maybe a bit too YA-ish for me at this point. I've read YA books that didn't feel that YA-ish. I don't know how to explain it. Like sometimes the character reads a bit older, but this girl was constantly complaining about like who to kiss and like what boys she might fancy, and that just really got to me at some point because there's magic. There's literal magic. She's a literal witch. There's so many cool things going on in this book, and here she is worrying about which boy to kiss. And I was like, yeah, I don't feel this personally. This is my romance hating month, apparently. I don't know what is up with that because I love romance and I love reading about it. But yeah, I'm just having a bit of a moment, I guess. But apart from all that, the main character was so funny and witty that I still had a really good time with this book. So it's about Rowan, who's sent off to the countryside for the summer to live with her aunt, who's a hedge witch. And the idea is that her aunt will teach her the finer magics of being a hedge witch and like how to do hedgecraft. And in this small town, Rowan is first utterly bored with everything, but then she makes some new friends who are also witches and wizards. And just this whole book had such a cozy witch vibe, and it really reminded me of sort of those afternoons in the Weasley's house that you read in Harry Potter. And it was just really whimsical and magical, and it gave me all the right feelings, and I really enjoyed it. Then the last book that I read this October is also the only book I have a physical copy of, and that is Heart of Ink by Cornelia Funk. This was one of my favorite books as a child. Like, I remember afternoons spent just reading this book for hours and hours on end, and that is literally what I did this October as well. I just got into my cozy reading chair and I read this for such a long time. And I've also made a few small annotations because there's just some passages and sentences in this book that I adore so much. I keep calling it Heart of Ink because the Dutch translation is Hart van Inkt, but I think it's called Inkheart in English, so I'm sorry for that. So we follow Maggie and her father is a bookbinder, and they travel around quite a lot. He goes to antiquaries? I don't know how to say that. He goes to different bookstores and booksellers, book collectors, and then he buys books. Old ones, but also new ones. And Maggie and her father both have the biggest love for storytelling. So if you love those books that are about books and have like lots of libraries and bookish things in them, highly recommend this one. Especially the first half is so, like, it's just catered to book lovers, and you really, really notice that when reading it. And I think that's also what I loved about it so much, because just the love for books is really jumping out of these pages. Anyway, one night a stranger is at their doorstep, and then she and Mo go on the run. Maggie has no idea what's going on basically, but as it all unravels, it turns out that some characters have escaped the pages of a book, and there's a whole magical world waiting. There's lots of strange things going on. There's this one really classic storybook villain, but I think because this is a children's novel, I really understand the choices made there. It's just a vast world, and Cornelia Funk is really good with the world building. I do have to say the repetition really got to me at the end of this book because it was just all the same for the last 250 pages. So at that point I was really tired of it because this is really long, but I do want to pick up the next one because it was just so nostalgic to me and it really took me back to my childhood. So yeah, had a good time with that. So those were all of my October reads. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and maybe it gave you some ideas of some books to pick up. Let me know whether you read anything good in October, and if you've made it to the end of this video, leave a nice pumpkin emoji. I've put these pumpkins here specifically for the sake of like cute decoration. So I want to thank all of you guys for watching my videos. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and leave a nice comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!